this beautiful Tuesday. This is Apostle Baker J. Baker, who happens to be a doctor in psychology. And this program is the one really telling it like it is. So I have my eldest child on with me today. She's a pastor. She's a number of different things. But first of all, she's my child. She's my daughter. And she's the very first of my biologicals. And her name is Lonzine Lee. And without any further talking about it, welcome Lonzine to the program. Pastor Lonzine, welcome Lonzine to the program.
Thank you very much, Mother. It's good to see you.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about some things that I think is hitting. I hear a lot of people talk about how their parents were ministers and how it turned them against the church and how disappointed it was because the congregations or whatever it is take care of them and just a whole lot of other things. Yours is like a little bit different. I didn't become a minister until after you were an adult, or you're supposed to be an adult. And so, yeah, you got that. So what I want to talk about today is what was the transition like growing up with brothers and sisters and cousins that were adopted or cousins that were like brothers and sisters and eventually became real brothers and sisters by adoption. And, living the life that you lived, I'd like for you to go ahead and start to talk about some of the things. What was this transition? What was this stark transition? What was that like? Or what was your childhood like? Any and all of those things, because I think it's very important as to how people view, they have all these pictures of their parents and stuff. And any rate, I'm just going to wind you up and allow you to talk for a while. Go ahead.
Well, well, I'm going to quote Shakespeare a little bit and say it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. It was an interesting time altogether. I grew up with you in the unsaved mode. So a lot of the stories that you allude to when you're sharing, I was a witness to some of it. I really appreciate the fact that in the worst days of whatever you went through, we didn't see that because you sheltered us. So I had a sheltered upbringing in spite of the fact that I was exposed to drugs and I mean just some of the perversities of life. But it was always with the I want to tell people this. You see, my mother would have shot them with hollow point bullets, and so we were very protected. In our thing, it was like no matter how pretty or appealing they thought any of the children were, nobody touched us because they would die. And since we grew up with that sense of protection, I grew up with that. Uh, that was that was just what to me was normal life. So being used to watching you and I as you know, we had there was a lot of issues that I had, and so there was a lot of war, and it wasn't actually hatred, but it could come off looking like that. And yet whatever you did, I was still going to follow you. So as long as I just didn't know how to sin like you, and I was kind of stupid, which means living in even more darkness than, I was unaware of the nuances and what people were like and things of that sort. And so I was really, really not good at it at all. And so thankfully for me, you got saved. But when you got saved, I didn't understand it. I think it was about the time the house caught on fire. You were up in Northern California. By that time, you had put me out your house and told me I needed to leave. so so I was 21 or 20 something, very arrogant and unthankful. And you put me out. And I'm gonna tell you people, this is the truth. I had an apartment. I was working at UCLA, and I had my very first apartment, and I was supposed to move in on a Saturday morning. But that Friday night, I got arrogant, and it was probably about 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. And she asked me if I had the number to the landlord. I said, yeah. And she said, call them because you need to move tonight. And we were sitting down to dinner, but she had my younger sister drive me to Los Angeles. I didn't even get to have dinner. I got a sandwich to go. And she wrote me a check because she was giving me the money, fronting the money for my move in, and she cried. It was like cried that her daughter was leaving, or cried because she's happy I was gone, whatever the reasons were. And that was kind of the way it was. So my point is that I was not in the house at the time that your salvation story happened. I was living a different lifestyle. And the last time I had checked in with you, we were still sinning. So when you got saved and all of this other stuff, I didn't even know. I wondered about that, and I was sharing with before we went live that I would drive from Los Angeles back up to Northern California to see you, and I get saved every Thanksgiving and Christmas because that's what you wanted us to do. So we prayed the prayer and then we go back to the life because I really did not understand that you were different. And I think that it didn't catch even your salvation when I moved from LA back. And there you were in this house full of these people with the craziest stuff going on, all this prayer in tongues, and I didn't know what was wrong with you. I really did not understand. I came to be good. I was going to be good. I didn't know what I was going to be good according to the days of growing up as a little Baptist kid in the church. That was my idea of good. But what you were doing was different. And so I didn't even know you were in ministry. I mean, it sounds odd, but because you never sat down and said, okay, this is what I'm called to, and this is what I'm doing. You just went off to Africa and you went off to Israel and you went off to different places. You went to Bible college. I showed up for that, because by now the salvation thing has started to kick in for me, but I didn't actually know you were a preacher. And so by the time I knew they called you evangelist, but I didn't know an evangelist was a preacher. so by the time it all caught up, it was life. It was just simply life, and you didn't neglect. So I didn't, go through that.
How did you, when you came back from Southern California? Because one of the things of it is this, that as I remember it when I wrote you to check, and did what was necessary in order for you to get out of there. I cried because number one, I knew that I was sending someone away that was not equipped to really deal with what it was there, but your arrogance and your dishonor and disrespect, even then, even in the sinful ways, there were certain things that could be done because I had to go back to the fact that number one, you were raised by your grandmother. And so I couldn't understand that. You were raised a lot of the years by her in a sense. I financially took care of all of you guys, but she kept you so that I could work and I could go to school, so that I could do whatever it was that I was to do. But I knew that this wasn't a part of who it was because I didn't talk to her that way. And so one of the things of it was, this was one of the generational blessings as I see it. And so that was not allowed for you to do that to me. So my crying was, I have to get rid of her before she is no more. And that was really the thing, because if you had stayed there, you'd have probably not left, walking. You'd have been left feet first, and then I would have been in prison. Okay, because way back then it was I brought you into this world, so I'm able to take you out. But what happened that allowed you to? That was it.
Mud holes, as I recall.
Stuffing all the mud holes and that and all of those kind of things. I mean, when you left at that time, I was not saved. I was saved, but I hadn't given the Lord my life.
Yeah.
But what happened that made it so that you decided to come and be with and come back to Northern California? What happened? How did you decide that you were going to come to my?
I was raped by I don't remember which guy, but it was I played around a lot. I think I had actually prayed the prayer with you, and the rape happened after I had what had happened is I had a nervous breakdown at work. And I won't go into the whole testimony, but I was at work and all of a sudden I fell apart and I didn't know what to do. And I, as you know, I was scared to die. I knew enough about hell. I was scared to die. Sometimes I would have anxiety attacks and I couldn't sleep. And that one night I called you. It was after, I'd gone to work and I just fell apart. I disappeared. So my friends, and I had one of those homes where all the folks from the club were also friends. And so they would all come to my house. And so people were staying. So I had men and women looking all over the city of Los Angeles for me. And that was the night I almost got murdered. And so when I called grandmama, your mother, and I was on the radar. I was evidently, there was like some kind of supernatural thing that was going on because of the different people that were looking at. Your sister, Auntie Meme, was the one that told me God is calling you, and she was still doing the drugs thing, but she came out of it enough to tell me, I know what you're going through, and she hit it immediately. And once I heard that, I was like, oh, okay. And I ended up leaving the man that was assigned to kill me that night and taking a bus and going home. And I've got all these people looking, and you're on the phone. They're like, you got to call your mother, you got to call your mother. And you led me to the Lord that night. And this was the real one. And then I think fast forward a couple of months and I got raped. And so it was just like, okay, I think you said it's time for you to come home. I said, okay. So I quit my job. And I think within 30 days or something, I left LA and I got into, I didn't even have a car, rented a car, loaded it up and drove back to live in your house. And that was when I made that internal decision. I'm going to be good. And that's when I showed up. And as I said, you're praying in tongues and you're doing all kinds of stuff. But I did not know. I didn't get this memo. So I didn't know what was up.
Well, Audrey May, your aunt, she was still doing heroin, or whatever it was, because she'd been a heroin addict for about 30 years. And she was the one, from what I'm understanding, she said something, you needed to be with your mother, or your grandmother said you could live with me. And when I led you to the Lord, it was like one of these things, God, kill her or have her to really accept you. Okay. I don't really care which one it was. So it was that hardcore evangelist that I was at that time. It was like, either do her in, make sure she's saved, and then take her out so that, she doesn't destroy her opportunity of being with you. And it was one of those things. And then you came to live with me, thinking at that time, how these people going to tell her? How these people going to tell somebody they're going to come and live with me? I mean, it was like, oh yeah, I was saved. I was filled with the Spirit. I was all that empathy and all that stuff. But I didn't want you to share my house.
Oh no, not me. And I mean, people may not understand that, but I was one of the most depressing people you could ever be around. Carried a heavy gloom, and I was really, really stupid. So that means that I would open up to all kinds of scenarios. And I was miserable on top of everything else. So, and I recently heard a man say that he killed a woman. He had injured her, but he killed her because she was so miserable. He just decided to take her out of her misery. So, I mean, that came from a very strange place. But I really do understand. I was also somewhat suicidal. So I was miserable. It does not hurt my feelings when you say it, because I can imagine people, I don't know what
it was, as if you came in a room and it was as if a dark cloud had come in the room. And it was like one of these things. I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to live around this. Either we're going to get her delivered or she going to get out of here. Okay. Either she going to get delivered or she going to die. And since I had accepted Jesus, but I understood one thing, and this was one thing I really understood. I understood that God will forgive you for anything. And in my head, I'm thinking, I know what I could do. I know where I could bury her. I know I could kill her, and I know how I could bury her, and I know what would happen so that they would never, ever, ever find her.
Yeah, and you were mean to me too.
Huh?
You were mean to me. You did not.
Oh, yes.
You did not want me. I mean, you were mean.
Oh no, I did not. I did not want you there. And then what happened? And then what happened? Actually, I didn't want you or your sister there. I didn't want nobody there. Okay. It was
Good
like
with
one
your
of these
friends, yeah.
things. I'm barely doing this myself. So I mean, having even you guys there, it was like one of these things. Is like, hello,
Mm,
this is all
mhm.
this load to carry, and then my sister calling saying, "Sister, I need some help. What kind of help do you need? I need some money. I need some money." And then my brother calling saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, I need this and I need this and all of these needs and all of these things." And
Yep.
I'm thinking, how can I escape
We was trying
God
you.
had in common? That's not, that's not what he had. And he reminded me of the promise that I had made to him
Mhm.
that I will give you the same number of years, and I will serve you with the
Mhm.
same tenacity, the same all in that I
Mhm.
did for all these years. And that was one of the things that saved me from being in prison, saved your life,
Yep,
saved a whole lot of things and stuff.
it did.
You had mentioned our prayer meetings and things. Tell me, as when did you really realize that you were a preacher's kid?
Oh golly, when did I realize I was really a preacher? I don't know. The truth of the matter is that um it pro I don't really think I connected with it, if that makes any sense at all. I mean, you were doing what you did. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know you would leave the country so often, you know. Um, so the connection to being that, I think it may have kicked in a few
Maybe
years
this
ago.
is a better question. What made you know? Because I'd gone through transitions and I'd gone through this. Oh, this week I'm this. This week, oh,
Yep.
this week I'm this. And I mean, I'd done the gamut. If it was
Yep.
out there, do it. I was in it.
Yep.
But the thing is this: when did you find out? When did you realize that
Mhm.
this is real? That all the sex parties, all the orgies, all of those things that I kind of hit you guys from them, but you already knew what was going
We
on.
knew.
All the
Yeah, we
parties,
knew.
all of these things. When did you realize that you didn't see that anymore, and that
Well, one thing was really simple because your parties, oh, we used to get a lot of money. We got a lot of money. People would give us money and pay us to leave the house. None of these people was paying us to do nothing. They were telling us to come and sit. But I think the day that it really kicked in for me was the day when you had your a bout with alcohol and you had burned a tea kettle and I came in and saw it turned off and by then I had learned a little bit about prayer and I learned just enough to two fingers on a bottle of alcohol and pray for you. And I saw you stop. And so it was the fact that, I mean, you were annoying with the things that you would talk about the Bible, and that was all that you would talk about. And then the way that you would pray and sing Isaiah 60 or 61 or whatever, rise, shine for the light. It's like, you have got to be kidding. And getting up to go to prayer meetings, up driving, well, you were living up in Santa Cruz Mountains or thereabouts. And it was the way people were talking to you and the people that you brought around. And when I would share things from my Los Angeles life, and it would actually, and I'm speaking one or two little 4-letter words, and you're like, oh, not speaking them, but reading. I never cussed in front of you, but it was subtle layers upon layers upon layers. But when you gave me my Bible and I started to read it, and I started to believe it myself, not because of you anymore, but you were able to answer things, and you and your prayer partner, and I would look at your faces and I'd see something very different. Well, it drew me. I'm like, well, if this is what we're going to do, then this is what we're going to do. And so I don't know that I necessarily knew I was a preacher's kid as much as I became a child of a preacher whose message was being preached and lived in the home, and it was enough to convert me. And I think that that's probably what the difference was for me. It was less about the I heard about these people in this PK syndrome, but as you said, I was an adult. Well, so I was old enough anyway to be an adult, and it started to really hit home. I didn't have the drug stories. I had the rape stories and the abuse stories and the torment stories. But I had a parent that was strong enough, you know, and it was probably when I started making the transition to stop trying to protect you from the evil that had been done to me. And you were showing that you could take it. I don't know that I believe that you loved me. I mean, I knew that you would kill people for me, but I didn't necessarily know that you really loved me. It took a few more years, you know, for that, because we had so many battles and there was just so much pain, you know, not understanding that at that time. But you were not truly my enemy, though I could treat you like that. But I did not recognize that other than Jesus, you really were my best friend. You're muted. Oh, there
It
you
was
go.
it was an interesting thing in that with all of these things, God knows how to protect us
Mhm.
in that we can't even imagine. Because when you were raped at 8 years old, and I didn't know it,
Mhm.
okay, and it was not one of those things of neglect. It was a thing that I really thought it was, a part of something that should have happened, where you should go and see your father, that family, and all of this stuff. But one of the things that I tell people, don't try to protect your parents from what it is that they're going to do. And I know
Mhm.
there was a threatening type thing to you. If you tell her, then she will kill me or cut me up, and she will do this, and then she'll be in prison.
Yep.
Well, for an 8-year-old child, this is really something. And so, can you remember any of that torment, that torn between two things? I really want to tell my mama because I know that my mother will take care of and protect me, and this will never happen to me again. And then,
Mhm.
ain't your mother because she has this violence about her, or
Mhm.
real
Mhm.
reputation, this real, anyway, this whatever it is, certain things we ain't talking about because wait till
Don't have time.
anyway,
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
anyway, okay. But
I mm,
can you go through some of that? What's
yeah.
the double-mindedness, actually, what it was, the being torn between those two things.
What I ended up doing is just stuffing it. With grandmama, I was ashamed. With you, I was afraid. I was afraid not of what you would do to me, but that you would kill. I didn't like you very much, but you were the best thing I had. You and your mother. And I did not want to lose either one of you. I didn't want my grandmother to be, in my eyes, I didn't want my grandmother to be ashamed of me. And I didn't want you to go to jail. So I stuffed it. So I kept it. And of course, the torment of that level of torment had to do with keeping a secret and having to stuff it so far down. I kept it from myself. And what happened is I began to be very afraid. Grandmama used to ask me all the time, "Why are you so timid? Why are you so timid?" And I was timid. Um, wow, Angela. I just saw the name of somebody from my high school best friend right there, who just showed up. Um, so I just became an actor, and I played different roles, and I wasn't real, and I also did not know how to be myself, because that's when I learned astral projection and exiting my body and becoming her and she instead of me. So my reality just shifted, and I know you saw that because I was very odd, but it was my escape mechanism. I didn't know how to escape to God. And so this was the best that I knew how to do. And coming into salvation and into all of these different things, as you know, it took a long time. I couldn't keep the secret, and so I leaked it to relatives who told, and that, of course, caused me to become very unforgiving and bitter. And so, I mean, we went. It's a whole session by itself. So I know we're almost out of time. So that's basically what I did, and it gave you a whole lot to practice. Because it was a mess. It was a mess. Yeah.
Well, no, it was practice. It was actually the opportunity to practice what it was that I was doing in different places. But there was a lot of witchcraft. You see, there was lot of witchcraft going on and stuff, and you really didn't know my past and some of the things that had happened to me. So it was like, a lot of it was sorcery, witchcraft, all of those different kinds of things were going on, and that real violent nature. But the
Yeah.
thing is this: it was really one of those things. It was when God says, when the Son sets you free, you're free in your actions. And I
Yes.
remember one of the things that you said. We have about 2 more minutes. One of the things that you said, we're going to continue this next week with Pastor Lonzine, with Lonzine Lee. I just want my audience to know that. One of the things of it is this. I remember praying down there and praying for all of my children. And your brother was off into his stuff, and my sister, and I mean, the whole family was a hot mess, and it was one of those types of things. Mother was going into Alzheimer's and all of that. She was forgetting stuff. My sister was using up everything and having to send her places and having to supply for everybody, having to do that. And then I had gone from riches to rags. I meant, being well off, being able to do whatever it was that I was to do, and then losing everything. But then God restoring stuff and restoring it to the point that they could all do what was necessary to be done again. And this was something. But I remember when you read in your Bible that you were to go into your closet.
Yeah.
And in that secret place. And I remember Reverend Karen, and Minister Dorothy, who she is now, and all of these people would be coming there for prayer. And when we meet on the next program, I'd like for you to be able to share that, because actually I heard you pray, and finally you got baptized in the Holy Spirit. Actually, your language was more exuberant then than it is now, and you were just going on and reading the Bible and understanding and how Apostle Silvestri played a place in your life. This is Dr. Baker J. Baker, Apostle Baker J. Baker, and I see my son AJ Nunez on there, Apostle AJ, whom I love. That's my baby boy. Anyway, we have to go now. If you want to give into the ministry, all that information is on there. This is Apostle Baker J. Baker, who happens to be a doctor in psychology, and Pastor Lonzine Lee, who happens to be my daughter. And we're saying goodbye for now. Please join us next week when we're back here to really tell it like it is. If you have any questions about anything, send those questions in. We'll answer them. I'm not ashamed to answer any of them. So we got to go now. Bye-bye.